Right. No. Vakato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yasa bhagavato samavakasangho amayam bhagavantang sadhammam sasangham Ime sakare hiyatarahanga pete hiyape pujayam Satu no bhande bhagava sutira parini bhutopi Bhajima janatanu bhavana sam Ime san mare do katapana ngara bunde tigan ho. Mahakam di harakam idaya sukha. Dam bhagavanta Deva Vakato Bhagavanta Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namam Annamayam Buddhasa Bhagavato Pupavakanamakaram Romam Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Dhamma Sambuddhasa.
Let's spend some time cultivating. Cultivating one of the strengths and resources of cultivation is to move from reactivity to responsiveness. So with reactivity, we feel we get thrown, immediately jump into an emotional pattern that's quite familiar and goes into an unbalanced state. We lose our fundamental grounded presence. And this reactive energy rushes through and takes us out. And often into places where we feel unbalanced, and that can result in feeling shaken, saying things, doing things, feeling things, and creating a bit of an emotional debris that takes got to kind of recover and repair. Actually, not much useful came out of the reaction. Responsiveness means that emotional energy, intention, can move. It moves steadily, and it's more got a suffusive. It's sort of like gently like steam suffusing, whereas reactivity tends to flash like fire. And the suffusing effect actually means that our system is quite warmed, strengthened by that response. We feel the response has been good, comfortable with, and whether we get the results in, let me say, the world of consciousness, the world of external reality, we don't know. But what we do know is we've held our own presence, we've spoken our truth, we've said our piece, we've heard ourselves, and we've maintained integrity and been strengthened. This, of course, is most important as we are often flooded by the effects of other people and the world around us. We're very permeable. So we can get a sense of extreme outrage, grief, despair is pretty common experience, frankly, when we absorb into world news, and then feeling of, you just feel stuck and hopeless. So one of the gifts of Dhamma is to be able to, as it says in the Mangala Sutta, while living in the world, not affected in worldly ways. So the world tends to make us more grounded, more honest, more compassionate, rather than broken, fragile, and reactive. And so the citta has to learn new ways of doing that. And one of the great resources is just to be in the body, and because it's in the body where these reactive energies rush through our nervous system. And if they can sort of, instead of rushing out into these reactive patterns, they can be held carefully with presence, and they change. And the citta has to learn that. So we take up our fundamental meditation attitude, sitting at the root of a tree. Sitting at the root of a tree, it's somewhat sheltered. You've got a trunk behind you, you've got leaves overhead, but it's not walled off. Definitely, you're sitting outside. So we take up that physical position, that mental attitude, and then, just finding first of all the ground, the steadiness, a sense of sheltered, and not closed in. Do you know what I mean? That sense. So we can even have your eyes half open. but hold them steady. So it's not a close-up attention that we'd have from reading a book, for example. It's an attention that, in visual terms, is like arm's length around you. It's a slightly wider mode of attention. And in that, we can sense our own bodily presence, but we're not scrutinizing it. We just sense that's there. Really sensing that presence. So this is described in the suttas as mindfulness to the extent to which there is knowing there is a body. Just a sense of a embodied presence. And take some breaths, breathing along within that. And with that span of attention, awareness has got a lot more room. It's no longer so compressed. So with that, awareness means we can enjoy. Not just holding attention, also get something, hey, well, how does this feel? This is rather agreeable or comforting or steadying. Pick up the sign, steadying, always there, given support. And again, breathing helps to highlight that quality, that sign. When you feel steadied, just as you widen your field of awareness. So it's slightly different from attention. Attention places a particular object. Awareness is almost like, how are you? How is it now? And how are you? What's affecting you today? What's affecting you now, today? There might be a whole range of pieces that froth through, but perhaps something stronger concerns us. All of us are aware of deep, miserable conflicts in the world, pain, terror. Perhaps in our own lives, something really quite evocative. And don't go into the topic, just notice. You can be aware, You can sense something seems to be bubbling or pushing. Maintain the field. Don't go into the topic. Don't go down to the one point on the object. Maintain that field. Feel what you feel about war, about grief, about loss, about despond. But everybody gets this, not just you. This is part of what happens with birth into this realm. Is it possible when maintaining awareness of that which is problematic, or maintaining that, what would it be like if this wasn't there? Without trying to get rid of it, just a sense of openness, joyfulness, relief. End of suffering. And this place, or this, where you're at the end of suffering, at least around this particular topic, that's your uncontracted state. I would say that's your normal realized state. When you're not pressed, contracted, pushed, carrying weight. Feel how your body feels then, how the sense of having a body, how the sense of being here feels when you're not oppressed, when the stone is taken away, the pressure of a stone or a rock is taken off your heart. No craving, there's no fear, no position, there's no attitude. Maintaining breathing, maintaining that mode. Once again, we return to that topic or that place of suffering. But now we return to it with a heart that has tuned in to the ending. So now our response might be one of compassion, some sadness, but also compassion, that in us which gets hurt in all of us. Carrying one's own wound with a healing attitude and a healing energy. Maybe this is something one can turn to, and we can direct people near and far who are in pain, fear, grief, people in rage, violent and violated, all caught in suffering. And just hold them with a heart of compassion. No blame, useless. Blaming, useless. And make the determination when suffering comes my way, you're suffering, somebody else is suffering, the world's suffering, I'll maintain openness, presence, compassion, not resist, not blame, not fight, not despair. Take a few moments to lift your attention and an occasion for a talk.
Brahmachaloka Dipati Sahampati Antanjali Anadiwaram Ayachata Santida Sata Harjakajatika Dese tu Dhammam Anukampimam Ajahn.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Mm. So I've been touching into the theme of dependent origination, dependent arising, or codependent arising, the last few sessions, and obviously it's quite a complex topic, but I'd like to retain some pragmatic simplicity about this, and also to remind you, it's not fatalistic. Yeah, no, it's kind of potential. So the fundamental statement is, when there is ignorance, then certain habitual activations start happening. When there is ignorance, when the chitta is ignorant, when it's blocked, when it's occluded, when it's out of touch with Dhamma, then certain reactive, you could say, once again, reactive tendencies start cooking, and they throw us out into the world of external reality, so-called external reality, or divided reality, me and it. And then the names and appearances and behaviors start happening. And we start labeling things and responding to our labels. Something labels something, and we respond to the label. He's a terrorist. No longer a human being. We get a label and then we respond to the label. It's a nama rupa in pragmatic terms. Yeah. And so this is the operating system of samsara. So the first sections are about the fundamental operating system. And so there's naming and responding to what we name. And then it starts off through the sense bases, external senses, sense media, and then contact impressions jump up, and then feelings, craving, clinging, becoming, getting very much embedded in the world that a chitta has created through its designating. That's that. Yeah. And its designating, nama, is it's handy, because instead of seeing something afresh, we see something as, oh, that's Uncle Joseph, or that's Sister Lee. Yeah, and then clearly that's a fairly innocent one, but we can have all kinds of moods and emotions and attitudes and assumptions about that person that actually are history. They're not fresh. They're not real. And we lose the freshness and the immediacy of the person by just referring to the label. And particularly this label becomes the cook or the boss, or, in other words, a function. And we've missed the chitta within that, or that being. And so your relationship isn't heart to heart. It's my responses to what I've just designated. Yeah. So you get very strange relationships. You're designating me as the cook or something, and I don't see myself. I'm just this. Here I am feeling my joy and sorrow and pain and worry, whatever, and I'm being called a cook or a whatever. And so then we miss each other. We miss the truth of each other through this naming, designating process. But it's easy. You don't have to touch people, really. You just touch what you think of them. And it's easy. But it's also lazy, and it's also stupid. We're out of touch. We can live a lifetime never having actually met anyone apart from our own projections and impressions. And the gift of other people. There's chittas everywhere. Hearts are everywhere. And we miss them through this process. And again, we miss ourselves because we end up doing the same thing to ourselves. I am this, I am that. And generally the naming, the designating ourselves, what we designate ourselves of, isn't very celebratory. It's generally kind of, okay, it's got to be a history in it. Here I am, somewhat pathetic. Here I am, one who doesn't fit in. Here I am, try so hard but can't quite get things right. I'm not very good at this. I'm not, you know what I mean, that inner critic. And so then the heart is contracted into that particular shape. This is the process of becoming. We become the unresolved aspects of our karma. We become the unresolved aspects, my jealousy, my feeling of other people are better than me. And if I keep emotionally designating my citta in that way, I limit it to that's what it becomes. We become ourselves. But it's a fake self. It's a created, self-created over certain emotional impressions we haven't actually been able to resolve yet. Yeah. And we do it to others, you know. We feel we weren't very good parents, or we didn't look after our children very well, or and so on and so on. No, but this is the model based upon ignorance, at least the suffering. But it's not inevitable. If we were completely ignorant, we wouldn't even be aware of this. We'd just be completely in it, believing it. But we're not totally ignorant. You know, the Buddha said this is for those with a bit of dust in their eyes. When you've got a piece of dust in your eyes, it feels pretty sharp and stings. So it seems like all is there is that dust, that grain of dust, that sand grain. But actually, no. You know, but the attention goes to the hurt bit. You're going to kind of keep widening out of that narrow focus. This widening of attention is one of the processes whereby we come out of the trance of our self-creation and the creation of other people. Maybe so. Not so sure. Feels like this, but I'm aware of this. And do I have to add more emotional intensity to this? Could I actually begin to relieve some of the emotional pain of that? Heal. And so it's also to remember that liberation itself is a dependently origin process. And so, and the two do link up. One of the kind of really quite salutary suttas in the book of the Connected Discourses, the book of the 12th book, 33rd Sutta, 23rd Sutta, I've got it written down, of the 12th book of the Connected Discourses, where the Buddha goes through this sequence. He starts off talking about ignorance, takes it all the way down, that line or that theme, down to dukkha, suffering, stress, unsatisfactoriness. And he says, then, with unsatisfactoriness as a condition, there's the arising of faith. With dukkha as a condition, there's the arising of saddha. Now, this isn't always the case. It depends. It's another way of looking at dependent origin. It all depends. But we can have dukkha and just lose faith and lose heart and feel totally shattered, or something that's go, come on, got to get past this, got to rise up to this. Don't know how, but I got to open out of this. And I can open out of this. I can at least get perspective on it. Saddha. And giving oneself back some power, some authority over whether you're going to go into, whether chitta is going to go into dukkha and keep grinding away in that pattern, keep embellishing and solidifying that pattern, always to go, this is suffering, and there's a cessation, and there's a withdrawal from that, a letting go of craving to not feel pain, craving to get rid of the uncomfortable, a craving that things be utterly smooth and perfect. But bear in mind, without this suffering, we wouldn't grow. If everything was fine, we'd just be coasting along, sitting on sofas, sitting on cushions, not caring for each other. But because there is suffering, it kind of forces us or pushes us to grow strong, broad, kind, deeply compassionate, deeply resolute. And when you realize that, there's a sense of gladness, because you feel the potency that you didn't know you had to rise up against circumstances. So based upon saddha, there's pamoja, gladness. And if you dwell in it, breathe in it, it begins to be sort of quite deep rapture, and leads to samadhi, tranquility, and seeing things as they are. This is phenomena, no longer myself. Everybody gets this. And we're in this collected world of birth. And though birth in general seems to get a rather negative press in Buddhist circles as being somewhat a bit of a mistake, it's also the opportunity to take responsibility. Birth is about being in a separate condition, isn't it? I'm sealed in by my body. I am this body, not anybody else's body. This is what got born. Yes, but when you recognize actually this body isn't that separate, because it takes in air, it rests upon food and water, and it's connected to mother, father. It's not as separate as it seems, but there's autonomy within this connected universe. I'm not just a passive lump. There's potency to move and change. I can walk in bodily terms. And also, in terms of citta, I'm not separate, but also I'm not just completely merged. There's a certain sense of, I have a choice. There's autonomy. I can at least take responsibility over which direction my mind goes in. That's the opportunity of birth. To begin to realize one can take responsibility for where your mind, your heart goes. And that takes some skill, which is even the potential that one could. And training yourself so that your mind just doesn't go into these vortexes called asava, where self is the end of it, forms self, you get stuck. Instead, we go into this, something's definitely responding, but instead it goes into the openness and understanding of the nature of dukkha and the nature of sentiency, and taking responsibility for how we move within that. So it's not separate, but it's not merged. There's an autonomy which gives us the choice and increasingly the potential to adjust how we feel and what we bring into the world. This is exactly why, for example, the presence of a Tathagata, a Buddha or an Arahant, is an immense sign in the world. These are people who've got nothing, who are living in a world of sickness and death, who get sick and die themselves, often in miserable circumstances, like the Buddha did, dying under a tree, colic, wretched, broken down body, and yet the heart not going into misery and despair. In fact, serene. That's an example of someone able to rightly steer, rightly handle their citta. And citta knows where to go. Seeing things as they are, so it's liberated. In this world, by seeing the world as it is, including the world of one's own personal world. And then you come out of the dependent arising of dukkha to the dependent arising of liberation. Of course, this is a whole process, and it's not something you just sit down on a cushion and do. Sorry, someone's asking a question here. Asava. So someone's asking the word narrow, unskillful vortex. It's asava is the term. And asava is something like a kind of a corruption or a disease, but it's experienced as a turbulence, a welling up. And you can look at these things in Buddhist dictionaries. They tend to give you rather kind of academic responses, but as a felt experience, just welling up and wells up in your throat, and the mind is in this vortex. And the three fundamental forms is first of all thrown up in the vortex of sensuality, like looking for sights, sounds, touches, something to eat, something to drink, something to touch. So we go out into that, searching for comfort in that. Bhavasava, searching to become something, to get secure, to have status, to have personality, to be liked, to be pre-approved of, to win other people's favor, to, all the stuff that human beings tend to do. And why, like, does it ever get satisfied? And avijja, not the asava of ignorance, just not, it is welling up of these blurred responses. Yeah. So that's the fundamental basis of reactivity. And I'm saying we can clear that and come into responsiveness, which is, from that more awakened perspective. No, don't go down there, just turn that way and open out from that vortex into the whole kind of wide ocean of awareness with these ripples breaking across it. And I suppose we look at it even more sort of pragmatically and colloquially. We come down, to the kind of the nagging me sense that might come up as you meditate, or on your day, or when you're just going to bed, or those moments you suddenly, I am this. It's not even a thought, it's an emotion of same old me. Stuck, same old me, never quite this, or can't, or am not, or something. And it's like, and this can have really a lot of history to it. Me who's always got to do, me who never can do enough, me who doesn't get, me who gets too much, me who doesn't get enough of the good things, me who I can't get my needs met. I'm trying to find somebody to actually receive me and I can't get it done. What's, me who's left out. So this is the afflicted me sense. Everybody's got one, not just you. Because it's a piece of the territory of being born in this form. And something can kind of like, rather than seeing that me sense isn't personal, it's like a pulling in to old habit. And getting perspective on that. It's not that it need to get rid of it, but that we begin to sense that's a narrow, like a wound, if you like, in a healthy body. And let's kind of return to the wider picture and not go into that wound again. This is by not putting energy into that, the citta goes less and less often into that place of lack, depletion, frustration. This is what I'm talking about. And gaining the responsibility and the potential to not go into these defeated places time and time again. Recognizing the sign and then that not rejecting it, standing back and it's like this, and then meeting that with a place with a mind of sympathy, compassion, because everybody gets this. And so this is just not just on the cushion, is it? And one of the features in the Buddha says, well, this requires, they use the word nourishment. Nourishment. So often we consider practice to be doing something, yes, but it's also, it's just about feeding. Feeding. Because you can only do things in accordance with how well fed you are. Citta can only really steer when it's fed well, when it's healthy, or it's got some health in it. So quite a bit of our practice is just, or should be, about cultivating food for the heart. And rather humbly, the Buddha says, well, in terms of feeding, the first thing to feed upon is just be with good people. Really be with, don't just kind of pass them by, but sit down with them, listen up to them, engage with good people, with people of integrity. So your citta, because citta is not, it doesn't live inside your body, it lives in relationship. So it begins to sense, oh, this is what it's like when there's just it's just clarity and integrity and compassion and honesty and warmth. That's what that's like. Get it? And it begins to feed upon that right quality. So your first practice isn't really practice in the ordinary sense, it's opening and receiving the good. And then, of course, so it's very much opening up receptivity. It's not necessarily just enlightened people, but people with integrity and truthfulness, and who are straight, balanced. And citta then picks that up. Oh, that's the sign. No, that's the sign. That's what you tune into, and it's in you. It's also, once you recognize another, if you can recognize it's because you already have it, but you ignore it. You haven't fed it. So another person of integrity helps us to acknowledge our love of integrity and the integrity we do have, but perhaps have not really checked in with. And the more we check in with it, the more it straightens us and gives us strength. This is how food works. And citta can then amplify and feed itself upon skillful impressions and skillful signs. He also says, well, if you're with good people, the very strong likelihood is you're going to hear good Dhamma. You're going to hear words that are wise. words that are free from blame, words that are worth listening to, words that are a treasure, words that go straight to the heart, words that gladden. You can see actions that model qualities you feel gladdened by. You feel, oh, it's good to be a human. Good Dhamma. Not necessarily quoting suttas, but actually talking straight, talking free from gossip, nastiness, blame, and foolishness. So these then will give rise to faith. And this is when it starts. Rise to faith, you give careful attention. It means you look, wait a minute, that's where it goes wrong. Looking at that doesn't do you any good. Give attention to this. That's, yeah. You see the possibility to steer your attention, away from that which just grabs or thrusts itself into you. Give attention to that where you're getting steadying, soothing, comforting, straightening signs. Give your attention to that. Careful attention, rather than superficially caught up with this, that, and the other. It probably means a good amount of not attending to that which is pointless. This leads to, is a cause and condition for the arising of mindfulness and sampajano, contextual awareness. It means you're both alert, attentive, dispassionate, but also reading the room. What's going on around here? What's the right occasion? Reading the situation. So you're internally straightened, but also open and sensing the territory around you. It could be physical, could be psychological territory. Other people could be aspects of yourself. You're looking at yourself in context, like this person's experiencing sadness and sickness. So now is not the time for this. Now is the time for that. So the clear sampajano, careful contextual awareness, is indicating, giving you feedback in terms of what's suitable to give attention to, what's suitable to, what's appropriate, what's purposeful. And this causes one to gladden, by strengthening the heart, there's a turning away from sense contact as a source of orientation. We don't live in a city or a town, we live in our hearts. Isn't that true? I mean, when you get think, yeah, of course, yeah, I forgot. But, so when wherever you walk, you take your heart with you. That's why you live there. You can't get out of it. Whereas the rest of it can fall down. Yeah, so you restrain the sense faculties, which telling you, all these other things, these messages which are very impermanent, unreliable. This is condition for the support of the three kinds of good conduct: verbal contact, bodily contact, and conduct of the mind, where the mind goes. And this leads to forming meditation. This leads to actual meditation practice as the satipatthana. Now we've got into something which actually we sit, stand, walk with a particular frame of reference. I'm going to pin my mindfulness on a frame of reference rather than just on what's happening. Now I'm going to do something a little more formalized, because this takes me out of circumstances into depth. Into depth. Now I'm going to look into the nature of feeling. What does feeling do? What is it? I know feeling is pleasant, unpleasant. What does it do? It moves, doesn't it? It changes. You start to look in depth and to the operating system itself. And that's what satipatthana can help you to do. Because that operating system sends messages along highways in one's body and mind. And now we're looking right into those highways and saying, actually, that one doesn't need to be there. This one is very restricted. This has become overgrown. this also we can move out of that track. So you begin to reset through four satipatthana. And this is the way of relinquishing the hindrances, and the enlightenment factors come up. It's a deep clean and a reset of how we operate. We are now in touch. Avijja, ignorance, has been dispelled. We are now in touch with the reality of what's the basis of our samsara, not just in terms of details, but in terms of a fundamental system that can be penetrated, understood, and moderated, and even dismantled. So there can be very open territory rather than same old stuff time and time again. This is all dependent. It's all dependent. But the point is, if you keep taking the right food, it can only get better. You can't say, do a week retreat. You can't put time on it. You can't say to a plant when you put the seed in the ground, hurry up, produce nuts, produce fruit, produce flowers. Come on, I want it by March. You can't say that, but you can say if you put it there and keep nourishing it, for sure, it's going to grow. Yeah. And so you have faith in process rather than the craving to have and become. And that's the most sure source of faith, because often this stuff takes us into some pretty difficult territory where we lose our faith. We feel challenged. We feel confused. We feel losing it. This is a chance to keep remembering on that dukkha, remembering everyone gets this. We step. So, okay, this is a test. This is a test to see what I'm going to do. This is another test to see when I'm being blamed or left out. This is a test to see whether I'm going to go under into the old habits or whether I'm going to straighten up and say, my real territory is independent of that. And that's where the heart becomes the leader rather than a passive victim of circumstance. So offer this for your reflection this evening, today, whatever time it is for you in your world. In your chitta, it's here and now, same as it is in mine. May you be well.
Andamayanda Makataya Sadhukarang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Thank you so much, Tom Paul. Let us pay respect to Tom Paul by bowing 3 times. First bow, second bow, and last bow.
Okay.
That's all, Tom Paul.
I recognize your voice.
Sadhu, Tom Paul.
One of our friends in Southeast Asia who are helping to make this whole thing available for us all over the world. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? They're just individuals. It's not some organization, it's just free will individuals. That's the way the Dhamma works. That's the way it works, through just individuals putting their intelligence for the welfare of everyone. Beautiful sign. So I'll leave you now with a salutation, and next time round, if those of you are around next time, I will look at questions, and some of you can post them on the Dhamma tracks. I have some stored up already, and if we get through those, then there'll be also be kind of live chat questions. Next time I'll be in Bangkok, all being well. Or my body will be in Bangkok. My chitta will be where it is. So it's a salutation of the Triple Gem.
Bhagavato Bhagavatam Dhamma Saham Patipanno Bhagavato Sangho Sangham Namo. Okay. Stay in the stream, and hope to see you next time.